I love returning to my roots in gaming, and playing Shinobi made me realize something. I've only played Streets of Rage 4 for this channel, so...
What we do here is go back.
Streets of Rage, the fun little Sega Genesis title that basically started it all for little old me. Well, this and Golden Axe too. Both of these titles alongside Shinobi 2 were smack dab right on that legendary Sega 6-pack that I picked up as a spawn link. God, what a good value I got from that one. Streets of Rage was originally a Sega Genesis exclusive released in the year of our Lord 1991, it later being ported to the Game Gear, Master System, and the 3DS, alongside the innumerable classic game compilations that Sega has released over the years. I'd like to say now that in Japan, the Streets of Rage series is known as Bare Knuckle, with one having the subtitle of Furious Iron Fist. Which honestly, that's a pretty radical name. Streets of Rage is cool, but I also love Bare Knuckle, Furious Iron Fist just as much. Really, both titles are awesome. To get started with Streets of Rage, let's talk about the story. Put simply, this city, I'm not sure if it was Wood Oak City back then, but I'll probably use the name anyway, since that's what it's called now. This city was once a peaceful place to live, until a vicious criminal syndicate moved in and took over, taking control of the local government, and even buying off the police force as well. And, much like a poorly written webcomic, things quickly deteriorated into violence and crime, with nowhere in town being safe from the roving gangs of thugs. Amidst this turmoil, however, a handful of dedicated young police officers have quit the force in disgust, having had enough of the bullshit and decided to clean the city streets up for themselves. These four heroes are Adam Hunter, powerful boxing expert and avid lover of bonsai trees; Blaze Fielding, professional judoka, speedster of the trio, and a casual practitioner of whatever the fuck lambada is; Axel Stone, all-rounder martial artist and pro gamer. I wonder what games he likes. And this officer, I don't know if he has a name, but he never hesitates to roll up with a javelin missile launcher and bring down the thunder to back me up. That alone makes him worth mentioning here amongst the main three heroes. These four are brave enough to risk their lives on the Streets of Rage. Games start now. You can play by yourself or with one additional friend. Each character has their own slate of stats, of course, meaning each of them offers a slightly different playstyle from one another. Adam hits the hardest of the trio, Axel, I believe, is the middle ground of them, and Blaze is the speedster of the group. Pick your ex-cop and begin pummeling every piece of street trash that stands in your way of bringing down the syndicate. After selecting your character, you'll immediately be dropped onto the city streets, and you'll immediately begin facing resistance from syndicate goons. Gameplay-wise, Streets of Rage is a beat 'em up in its purest, most distilled form. You have a nice little combo to mash out, a jumping attack, and you have the ability to call for backup, which immediately summons the one good police officer left in Wood Oak to fire some artillery on your current location. Player 1 gets a javelin, as mentioned, but player 2 summon actually rolls up with a Hellstorm rocket battery. You also grab automatically when a target is in range of you, and you can follow this up by pummeling them with a bunch of punches and knees, or you can hefty toss them to the ground like the sack of shit they are. You can also vault over them with a jump, and if you grab them from behind, you can unleash a devastating German suplex on your hapless target. I believe this is your most damaging move. I'd actually like to point out here as well, certain enemies have the ability to throw you too, but impressively, with a precise press of up and jump, you can land on your feet and take no damage whatsoever. Wild that a game this old has throw teching, essentially. I love it. You also have an attack that can strike behind you just in case a foe manages to sneak up on you. As for the punks you'll be throwing down with, Streets of Rage introduces quite a few iconic street punks for the franchise, as well as some not so iconic ones too. Streets of Rage marks the first appearance of common street punk number 1. Galcia, as well as his more evolved and more intimidating form, Knife Galcia. Titan of Jobberdom's Signal also makes his debut, though his mohawk is flaming pink this time out instead of the more recognizable white. He still does have the ability to slide kick, and he can throw you too, though. BDSM Mistress Nora also makes her splash here in this game, whip in hand and all-around bad bitch attitude still in play. Though the stiletto variant, the black leather one for reference, has this nasty move where when you punch her in the face, she immediately cries, drops to her knees, and pretends to surrender, only to cheaply sucker slap you the second you let your guard down. I kinda hate that I can't keep beating her when she drops to her knees.
You wouldn't hit a lady, would you?
The hammer of justice is unisex.
You'll also do battle with the young bucks who are eager to host super kick parties under your chin. Lastly, of the normie thugs is Jack, a juggling pervert who only ever appeared in this game. He'll throw his torches or his axes at you. They also double as kind of a shield from your blows too, and they can knock you back if you ever try to close in for a throw. Honestly, a super annoying little foe. I'm glad he never came back. As for the bosses, well, let's discuss them as we comb over the levels of Streets of Rage that they lord over, shall we? The city streets is our first level. They're a nice blue shade that's complemented by the neon signs that line the various businesses. Looks pretty nice, can't lie. I admire the dumpsters full of ice cream, though I don't know how much I'm helping the city by destroying all the phone booths. Guess I'm saving money for the eventual future? Oh well. At least some have delicious ground food in them. Final boss for the streets is a weirdo named Antonio, who is a very bizarrely proportioned man who slings around a boomerang sword and does little baby Cotton Hill kicks. Really easy first boss overall. Verily onward to the inner city streets of Wood Oak City. This place is a shade more run down than the previous level, of course. The boss here is Freddy Krueger and Fist of the North Star fetishist Souther. This grimless pervert is a bit more difficult than Antonio, mainly due to having an invulnerable attack in his arsenal, but still a pretty easy boss overall. Let us take a moment to talk about the various pickups available to you in Streets of Rage. Apples and racks of beef restore your health partially and fully, respectfully, though. Sonic the Hedgehog once told me,
"Don't eat things off the ground,"
which makes me wonder about this game, to be honest. There's also the classic robber bags of money and stacks of gold bars, which award you with points. Points work towards extra lives, so it's worth grabbing these various things. Additionally, you can collect these limited edition Funko Pops of the main trio for an extra life. You can also grab this Hot Wheels police car to get an additional shot for your backup. But it wouldn't be a beat 'em up without some weapons, would it? And Streets of Rage obviously isn't lacking in those. You can pick up a beer bottle, and it has my favorite feature for bottles in any beat 'em up game. It's blunt until you break it over some chump's head, and then it becomes a stabbing weapon. Then of course you have your classic stabbing knife. Good for stabbing, also good for throwing. You have a nice baseball bat for clubbing punks over the head, and a pipe as well for slightly longer range clubbing of the head. Most interestingly, and most humorously, you have a pepper shaker, which basically functions as a stun grenade, one that leaves your target helplessly sneezing until you knock the spice out of their nostrils. I'm honestly kinda sad this one didn't make it into Streets of Rage 4. Anyway, we hit the beach next, and are attacked by the Ultimate Warrior. Named Abadidi here, all he has is a running lariat as an attack. That's all he needs too, because it does a shit ton of damage, and he doesn't get gassed like the real Ultimate Warrior, so he's an incredibly deadly foe. The lariat is pretty easily avoidable though, so at least you have that going for you. You fight across a big bridge next, eventually running across Bongo, a lardass who breathes fire. His weight is also a big factor in fighting him, since if you ever try to throw him, he is simply too heavy, and Bongo will fall right on top of your character, doing some major damage in the process. Fuck, as a grappler player, this is a nightmare matchup for me. There was actually quite a few times where Bongo ran right into my hands and I threw on reflex, basically, maiming myself in the process. Quite the jump in difficulty boss-wise. After the bridge, you'll hop aboard a luxury yacht where you'll end up facing off against Blaze's long-lost Japanese sisters, Onihime and Yasha. Their dive kicks are brutal and they throw quite a bit as well, but as long as you evade the kicks and tech the throws, you'll do fine against these two, provided you can lock them down long enough to hit them. You'll thusly move on to a factory. What do they manufacture here? I have no idea, but the presses here are environmental hazards, which are always welcome in games like these. No new boss here, unfortunately, just Souther's two brothers, Easter and Wester, assumedly. Hop aboard a big freight elevator next. No boss in this level, but you do get the satisfaction of throwing hoodlums off a thing to their death onto the streets below, which in a beat 'em up, that's all I ever want. Fighting force. After the elevator, you'll reach the top of the Syndicate headquarters. Have I forgotten to talk about anything before we proceed on to the final level? Oh right, the fantastic soundtrack. Composed by the now legendary Yuzo Koshiro, every bit of music in Streets of Rage is god tier. Every track perfectly complements the level it's attached to as well, and I'll be honest, I think Fighting in the Street, the track of the first level in this game, is one of the greatest openers in any video game ever. Really only rivaled in the series by Go Straight from Streets of Rage 2. Yuzo Koshiro did a fantastic job as always. There's a reason why they throw in music by Yuzo Koshiro in the opening screens of these games. He was just that damn good. Back to the final level though, the Syndicate HQ is obviously the most challenging level in the game, partly because of the gauntlet of enemies you have to face here. I'd also like to know who's shoving all these food carts down the halls here. We got some renegade bus boys up in this place, apparently. But even worse than the gauntlet of smacked up normal enemies is the gauntlet of bosses you have to face as well. You, once again, have to do battle with the bosses you fought before. This part is actually pretty insane difficulty-wise. I managed to get all the way to Onihime and Yasha before I finally perished, unfortunately. Since you're probably curious, in Streets of Rage you get 3 continues with 3 lives apiece to get through the entire game, but if that isn't quite doable for you, don't worry. If you have 2 controllers, you can do this little trick. If you go to the main menu and hold down A, B, C, and right with the second controller, and select the options menu with the first, you'll be able to increase the amount of lives you get each continue, and be able to select whatever level you want to start in. Helpful, if you're bad like I am. After busting through the last thugs of the Syndicate, you finally come face to face with the big bad man himself, Mr. X. Interestingly, Mr. X actually gives you a choice here. Fight him, or give up your crusade and become his right-hand man. An interesting choice, but I didn't come this far to give up, so we fight. Mr. X is the smartest character in beat-em-up history, since he brings a fucking Tommy gun to deal with you. Honestly, that's the one thing I always find weird in a lot of these beat-em-ups. A lot of these take place in America, right? Why isn't everybody packing heat? The thugs should have some guns, and I definitely should be strapped as well. It just makes sense. But I suppose that'd turn a beat-em-up into a shooter, wouldn't it? Oh well. You can leap over Mr. X's bullet spray pretty effortlessly, though you do also have to worry about the gun butt, which honestly I think does more damage than the bullets themselves even. All in all, he's a pretty strong opponent, but let's take a second to go over your other options, since I'm sure you're curious about it. If you opt to accept Mr. X's offer in a single player game, he just kicks you back to level 6 and you have to fight your way back to him. Annoying as hell, can't lie. But if you're playing a cooperative game, well, that's where things can get a little spicy. If one player opts to accept Mr. X's offer while the other refuses, the 2 of you will subsequently fight to the death. If the player who accepted the offer wins, Mr. X will give you another option to join him. This time though, you can tell him to go fuck himself, and if you beat him here, your character will take over the Syndicate with a unique end screen for each character during the credits even. I had no idea this ending existed, but that's pretty rad. But we only want good endings here on this channel, so let's get back to that. Upon defeat, Mr. X launches into the sky and then hits the ground before he gets up and finally dies of a heart attack. Mr. X defeated, the heroes emerge from Syndicate HQ, being greeted by Officer Backup.
Dylan, you son of a bitch.
After an enthusiastic greeting, he drops the trio off at a bridge with a great view of the city, and our heroes watch as the sun sets on a new Wood Oak City. Streets of Rage is an amazing game, full stop. It's one of the foundational beat-em-ups, in my opinion, alongside Final Fight and Golden Axe. You have enough story to motivate you to fight, the various thugs are damn near as iconic as the main characters now, and the soundtrack, oh god, it's sublime. One of the best in gaming for sure. And honestly, I think that's really all that can be said about Streets of Rage. So go play it if you haven't already. I shall not terminate this transmission though. As always, dearest of viewers, my name is HadesManticore, and this here channel is CityStateManticore. I very much appreciate it if you watch this one all the way to the end. Feel free to drop a like and a comment as well. Be sure to subscribe too, since as always there will be more content to come. I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye.